My most requested videos are my Encounter Ideas videos, and I love putting this series together, but the videos do take a lot of work and stuff. But one of the ones that's been requested is a throne room, and I figured I've pretty much more or less got the miniatures to do that, so for this week, Encounter Ideas, throne room. It's kind of a misnomer. There would be many different rooms that a monarch would use in order to conduct their duties, and one of them would of course be the royal court, and court is the key word, because the monarch is the head of the judiciary, and whilst the monarch probably wouldn't be involved in any trial involving a commoner, when it involves a noble, it is almost always the monarch who would make the decision regarding their outcome and their fate. So, one such throne room would indeed be a literal court. In this case, and her name is Solstice Winters. She's been escorted to the courtroom by her mother, Lady Winters. Being nobles, they stand on the rug closest to the monarch, but they have to stand at the back edge of it, as that's the etiquette. You shouldn't get too close to the Queen. That would be rising above your station. Of course, whenever a monarch makes any kind of public engagement, nobles and civilians of all kinds will flock to their side to just try and gain that briefest of moments with them, possibly to earn extra influence. In this case, Grimshock, from a half-orc representative from a nearby kingdom, seeks to just be noticed by the Queen. His presence alone, he's hoping that if he can be seen enough, the Queen will become accustomed to him. And then maybe she won't find him so revolting and he can actually engage in some diplomacy. Lady Waif Strafely spends as much time as possible at any royal occasion. She enjoys the fact that her own lineage is connected to royalty, but of course it diverged so long ago she has no real power anymore. She likes the fact that, technically, she's nobility and blue-blooded, and feels that the more time she spends in the royal court, the closer she is to where she feels that she should be. Ernest Prettypenny is here to petition the clerk. He's hoping that soon he can have his own case heard for trade rights. It's most displeasing to him that his own goods are not allowed to be imported here, no matter how addictive they are. Ms. Dot Matrix hates the idea of a monarchy, even though she's a dame. She's become something of a republican in her older age, but her case was heard a few weeks ago, and she was pronounced innocent by the Queen herself. However, there's some paperwork she has to sort out with the clerk of the court, and she was too late again to get it all sorted before the court was in session, and now she's having to endure the whole session in order just to get a quick word with the clerk. Little does she know that the clerk has other engagements tonight and has no intention of hanging around. Princess Penelope, or Princess Pen as she likes to be called, keeps beckoning to her sister to hurry up proceedings. The pair are going riding later. Meanwhile, the princess's maid of honour looks on in disgust at her mistress's behaviour. Guard Surly Pokenstick got promoted to the Royal Guard as a commendation for killing a goblin. He was escorting a trade caravan at the time. Alfred Bitpart is a career soldier. He worked his way up through the ranks and eventually was promoted to be a Royal Guard. He hopes to make captain of the Guard. It's a rank he's held before, but in a far lesser regiment. Clerk Vincent de Pontier has always had a keen interest in heraldry, an interest which has served him well in his career. When he became a clerk, he handles all the paperwork of the court and notes down any official proclamation. Tonight he has a date, and he's going to be leaving this room the moment the Queen's left. Occasionally, depending on who's being tried and exactly what's being discussed and what the potential crime or allegation is, sometimes the public viewing gallery is opened. There's much demand for the public to attend such events, sometimes numbering in the hundreds, but only a few are let in. The rest of the time, the door remains firmly locked. The court itself is a very grand entranceway, with this ancient water bowl being the centrepiece in the corridor. The walls are lit by two shining beacons that stand either side of some heraldic armour. At the far end of the corridor stands a statue representing justice. Midway down is a very inconspicuous looking door. We'll deal with that one later. More glowing light globes are either side of the throne itself to make sure the monarch is well lit. You'll notice also there's a hidden passage there, just in case the monarch needs to get out in a hurry. But if that doesn't work, there's another option. Hidden beneath the carpet is a trapdoor just in front of the throne. Inside the courtroom is a statue representing wisdom, which oversees all the proceedings. A third statue stands on the nobles' side of the courtroom. This one doesn't really represent anything, other than opulence, given that it's made of gold. Solid gold, too. This piece is there purely to demonstrate the wealth of the nation, to show that the monarch is indeed truly powerful. This wing of the castle is also home to a private study. Various books and bureaus are here, and as we can see, the king appreciates the occasional tipple of wine. Importantly, there's also an ornate mirror, just so that the monarch can check how they're appearing before turning out in public. The monarch doesn't carry keys, so interestingly, that innocuous-looking door is usually unlocked. It allows the flunkies to come and go to attend the monarch's needs. There's actually an alarmingly good opportunity there to, well, if a rival nation wanted to assassinate the monarch, if they did their homework, it might not be too difficult. Of course, if your players want to speak to the monarch without committing a crime, they may need to turn up at a social event. And luckily, most royal families will, several times a year, hold balls, and getting an invitation to a ball, well, that might involve some trickery and skullduggery on the part of your players, but once in, what do you find there? There'll be some familiar faces. In this case, someone's caught the eye of Princess Penelope and she's beckoning them to dance with her. The Duchess of Blightcrop was Princess Penelope's matron when she was younger. She nursed her in her earlier years and gave her her first education. And she's just broken off from a conversation, having seen Princess Penelope's antics. She thinks them most unladylike and is about to go over and have a word. Whilst waiting for the king and queen to arrive, many of the nobles and wealthier merchants are trying to discuss business. Earl Whitethorn has a bit of a temper, but he has caught Princess Penelope's eye. There are members of many wealthy families here. In this case, some of the ladies have started dancing by themselves whilst they wait to be asked to dance by the men in the room. The music's being provided by some very talented musicians. They'd have to be for that violin, trumpet and bagpipes to be working together. One of the most talented musicians is Carlos Five Fingers. He lost his arm when he was younger, but he still beats out a mean tune on his trumpet. For Jake Dancebad, this is one of the best nights of the year, because he gets to stand in front of the shrine to the monster. That allows him to stand on carpet. It's so much more comfortable when you're working all evening. The shrine to the monster is because this festival is dedicated to warding off all of the monsters that threaten the city. In a world such as this, where so many dangerous creatures roam, it's no surprise that some of the local festivities are dedicated to monsters and warding them off. In this case, the king and queen have had the room decorated to suit. They've just arrived and are stood in front of a very cleverly themed door. If our heroes have already met the king or queen, they might get the opportunity to encounter them in a more personal basis, in which case it's likely they would be received in some form of lounge or study. In this case, a library. Such rooms would almost certainly have a pull cord for summoning a flunky, but these flunkies are used to serving the king or queen personally and will often be on first-name terms, so be careful about abusing that privilege. You'll typically be kept waiting for quite some time, Indeed, if you don't have an appointment, it's most likely that the servants would actually wait a good half an hour before even informing the monarch. When the monarch does arrive, it's quite likely that they'll have various courtesans with them, in this case some ladies in waiting. If, however, our queen here was having some personal time with her husband, there's no telling what the players might catch a glimpse of as she walks through the door from the room behind. You realise, of course, that such powerful people are unlikely to have a character class of monarch. Perhaps a more interesting way to do a throne room is to have the monarch travelling. Perhaps they're on their way to a spa town or maybe they're just travelling to a different city because there's they want to be out of the city during this season. In such circumstances, it's almost likely in a world such as Dungeons and Dragons that they'd be travelling with a large royal guard, perhaps even an entire small army, or even a large one if they're on campaign. When travelling, the Latin and Old English term for the tent that the monarch would hold court in would be called a regia.